Hey there, let's get cozy and draw together for a little bit while I ramble on about some of the life lessons I've learned and that have been relevant to my own journey lately. As always, these are just the thoughts of a random artist who's been to therapy and is still learning how to handle so many aspects of the artist's life and life in general, to be honest. However, I hope the things I have to say resonate with you. But before we get into the topic, I'll give you a bit of context about the illustration I'm working on here. If you've watched any of my videos lately, there's a high chance you know about my bachelor/ongoing portfolio visual development project. It's for a visual novel with the working title Neptune's Reign, and while I still have a whole lot of viz dev to do for the game itself, I think I'm on the final stretch for the artworks I plan to put on my portfolio website for now. This illustration here was originally intended to be the cover of the portfolio PDF, but spoiler alert, the final illustration doesn't work that well for a cover. I'll get into why that is in a second, but point being, this illustration developed into a direction I didn't intend to. However, I'm still very happy with how this turned out and it will still be part of my portfolio. I originally planned the composition in a way that the focal point would be two particular points in the upper half of the illustration, and the lower half would be less detailed to not only direct the viewer's eye, but also to allow the text to be read. But while working on it, I had so many different things on my mind that I accidentally overworked everything a little bit, and in the end the whole illustration was visually a bit too busy to work the way I had intended it to. However, as a standalone illustration that visualizes the story and the character of the game, it still works. And just overall, I'm satisfied with the finished piece, even though I see many things I would have liked to do better. But this is also where we get into the meat of this video. There were moments while working on this I was seriously considering to start over, and this is actually the 5th version of the college sketch that I started, and luckily I did finish this one. But how did I manage to go through those lows and not throw all the hard work away? Well, the first thing I did in the very moment I noticed I was unsatisfied with my work was to think about the fake it till you make it advice. And I wasn't thinking about faking being better at art than I was, but instead to fake being happy about the piece. And honestly, it wasn't even faking. I mean, sometimes if I'm in a very low spot, I do have to really fake it, but most of the time it works like this. I notice I'm feeling very down about the piece I'm working on. I try to find one thing about the entire piece I'm at least a little bit proud of, and this could be something like, this hand is better than the last one I did, or I tried something new even if it didn't work out in the end, etc. And then I try my best to be happy about it. And focusing on the good thing will actually make you feel so much better, no matter how small the thing is. And chances are the thing you found isn't even that small because you're accidentally undervaluing your skills anyways. In relation to that, it's also very healthy to only compare yourself to your old self and not to others. Of course, there are situations where you have to see how well you fare compared to others, like if you want to see what makes your art, or if it's about analyzing what you should practice. But in your average everyday situation, just focus on your own development. I know you've heard this advice before, but this is also the kind of advice I personally had to hear a million times and at the right point in time to actually be able to properly understand and internalize it. Remember that in the grand scheme of things, you can't even really compare your art to the art of others. You might have focused on character art, for example, while the artist you're looking at for background inspiration put the same amount of effort into getting better at backgrounds, and is maybe less skilled in characters than you are. And that's simply because you two chose different paths to focus on. But you only see their background art and feel like you are just overall a less skilled artist than they are. Especially since you only see the artworks the other artist chooses to show, while you see every little wonky doodle on your own paper. But there are also other, even less obvious reasons why you shouldn't compare yourself to others, that have nothing to do with the art itself. Like you could have had a complete different upbringing that you had no influence in. And that goes from someone who maybe had to put all their energy into surviving because they were just unlucky with the family or general situation they were born in, while another person might have come from a well-off family of creatives who support them emotionally and financially and could even teach them things directly. And those are just more extreme examples. It might also be that you maybe had some trouble in school, so you had to put more effort into studying math or biology, while others just had a natural interest in many subjects or were just better at remembering things, so they had more time and energy to focus on drawing. None of these are things you know about when you see a random piece of art online, or even if you follow a specific artist for ages, simply because they don't talk about every single aspect of their life story. So yeah, while it's normal for humans to want to compare themselves to others, and I feel like artists are particularly susceptible to that, if you think about it, it really makes no sense though, and also isn't fair to yourself or your art. The next thing that helps me to view my art more objectively and be less emotionally attached is the thought that you need to draw 100 bad things to get to the good ones. Obviously that's not 100% true, but the sentiment behind it sure is. There are things like doing warm-ups or studying a subject or trying out a new medium or technique or approach to your own art process that probably produce quite a few artworks that you're not happy with, but once you got the hang of it, you will know what to do. Or you just simply stumble upon a new way of doing things while finding all the ways that don't work first. It's a little bit like digging for a treasure. Yes, you can get lucky and find the prize right in the first hole you dig, but by digging one hole and another, you get to know all the places there's no treasure, and that raises the chance of the treasure being in one of the last 3 dirt mounds instead of one of the 15 that were there in the beginning. And yeah, maybe you didn't get any treasure after digging the first 12 holes, but you were having a nice time while finding some shiny stones in the soil and listening to awesome songs while doing so. So whenever I notice my emotions being too unreasonable, I try to see the study session I'm doing or even the illustration I'm working on as one more dirt hole I need to check before I get closer to the treasure that might be under the next one. Another really important thought is to remember that your analysis and creation skills don't develop at the same speed. If you hate your art, it means that your eyes are better at recognizing what doesn't work than your hand is at doing the right thing right now. Which is good, because that means you know where and how to improve, which then means you'll experience a jump in your art skills soon. One way to get to that point faster is to practice the fundamentals. I'm not gonna go more into detail on how to do that in this video, but chances are that if your eye is further developed than your hand, so to say, you can already tell which area of the fundamentals you'd benefit from. For me, right now, it's illustrations with involved backgrounds in general, but especially the saturation of colors and perspective. And that's something this illustration helped me to pinpoint. For you, it could also be anatomy, composition, poses, storytelling and character design, vehicle design, animals, working with watercolors, just anything at all that you feel could benefit your skill set or anything that bothers you in your current art pieces. One thing you can do as well is maybe analyze one of your older works objectively as an example. Be very honest, but not mean. Well, but maybe also say the mean things you think about to get them out of your head. That stuff helps me a lot with not having the negative thoughts stuck in my own head. But for sure say the positive things. Even the smallest things. If you notice them, they're big enough. And those you should remember. So write down everything, but focus on the good things for now. You can have a proper look at the negative things when you feel ready to work on them, but not when you're already being mean to yourself. And one thing to always remember is to separate your art from your person. It helps to not get over-attached to a piece, to not take constructive criticism personal and being unable to learn from it, and overall just helps in viewing your art as what it is instead of what you want it to be. And that in turn actually helps you to get your art where you want it to be. It also keeps you from slipping into art block and many other things, if I'm being honest. Art is a very personal thing in many cases, and I don't want you to dissociate while drawing or anything like that. But if you're in the criticism mindset or even in the healthier analysis mindset, try to think about it as if someone else showed you their works. Chances are you're less nitpicky or brutal, but also less emotionally attached, and it helps seeing if your ideas actually work, or if you just like drawing characters with this specific silhouette, for example, even though maybe a bulkier build would suit this character better. Maybe you still think the perspective is wrong, but maybe you also see that the artist, who is totally not you right now, already has a strong line of action in the character pose, which could work well with the perspective if you only enhanced it a little bit. If you only thought of this as something you created, you might have been too focused on improvement and forgot to say something positive, and then you probably wouldn't have noticed the line of action at all. As for me and this piece, I realized halfway through that the level of detail wouldn't let it be the text-focused illustration I wanted it to be, but still a very nice, more emotional piece. As a cover, this piece wouldn't work as well as another thumbnail idea I had, but as a final page that leaves an emotional impact and hopefully stays with the viewer, it should work. On the final page, the text can also play a little bit of a smaller role than on the cover, so I can still use the very page for a very similar purpose as originally intended. I also learned a lot just from working on this illustration. My overall skills improved a lot compared to my past works. I did very well with the background. I didn't feel as lost as I thought I would, even though I did feel pretty lost at times. And I got a more concrete plan on what I want to work on in terms of practice for the future. These are lessons I'll be taking with me into my next piece, and one day I might even do a redraw of this particular illustration to check in with my artistic development. And I'm looking forward to that. And that should be it for now. I hope you could take something with you from the lessons I've learned myself over the years and keep relearning every once in a while. If so, let me know in the comments and maybe tell me what helped you whenever you are struggling with being overcritical or feel less than happy about your own art. But now I'm going to jump right back into working on the new cover illustration, so I hope to see you in the next video, and bye bye!